Yeah.
Fantastic. Living the dream.
Kicking the seat out there.
Do it.
Now you have to sit by me.
That's all
Hopefully you
right.
have room.
I'll have room. I do like to serve. Okay, so we are back from our executive session. Is there a motion to end executive session and convene into our regular session?
I'll make that motion.
Second by Jenny. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes and we're officially into our board meeting. I want to welcome everybody today. Chairman Bracken and Mr. Bennett are out today, so you're stuck with me. So if you can join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our first item on our agenda is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion? So moved. First by Jenny.
Second.
Second by Dave. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Down to our consent agenda items.
Madam Chair, before we do the consent agenda, I would like to recognize our student representative
Yes, please.
and ask Maya Angwin to give us a little bit of background on yourself. Anything you'd like to tell us, maybe some plans in the future, and go from there.
Okay, well, I'm Maya Angwin. I'm the student body president at EHS. I've been involved for student council for all of my high school career. I plan on attending University of Wyoming and studying nursing.
Great. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you would like to share with us about being here and being our representative?
I'm excited to be here. I haven't really attended a school board meeting before, but I'm very excited to learn
Okay.
lots.
Well, great.
They're
thanks.
thrilling.
Suspenseful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for coming. Okay, now down to our consent agenda items, which includes our minutes and our payment of the bills. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I need to recuse myself from bill number, check number 00110-794.
Okay, noted. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, first by Jenny,
Second.
second by Kay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Down to our school reports. Who is first? Anybody? Okay.
Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I'm going to speak on behalf of our 612 administrators. None of them are here tonight because they are all in Phoenix at an RTI, which is Response to Intervention Conference, with their guiding coalitions. And they're there learning about interventions and ways to support all kids in their learning. And that includes kids that are struggling to learn and those kids that have already learned it, and ways to extend their learning. So wanted to speak to that. And then also last week we had a PLC Institute in Salt Lake City, and we took 40 teachers and principals to that. And it was a fantastic experience. We had all of our 612 English teachers, ELA teachers, that went as a collaborative team, and they had an incredible time, and they got a lot of work done, and I'm really excited about what they're going to bring back and implement. So for you guys, it's unfair to expect student learning to improve without improving the learning of the adults in the building. So that's what this is really all about. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you for sharing.
Chair, members of the board. Just wanted to talk about a few of the really great things we have going at Aspen Elementary School. Just to get the year started, a lot of the things we do at the beginning of the year is to practice like good behavior, how to treat each other, be nice, those kind of things. And so one of the things that we hand out like throughout every day is we call them gotchas. So whenever we catch a kid doing something really cool or important, or just to really reinforce the positive things that kids are doing. So we have been working on teaching and training and retraining all the kids at our building. And at the end of the week, we ended up with a career day, which we had different people from different careers. We had doctors, we had nurses, we had physical therapists, we had a lineman, the electrician lineman guy. We just had a whole bunch of really cool people. We had retired Navy pilot come as well, just to show kids what they can become and what some of the options are out there. So as well, to end that day, we borrowed the dunk tank from UNT Meadows, so thank you to those guys. And myself and a few teachers got dunked. The kids who got the most gotchas were able to pick who got dunked, as well as classes got to vote a little bit. So that was one super fun thing that we had going on. And then the week prior to that, we had our Aspen Family Math Night. And the Math Night is where we present to parents what we do, what the important things and what we focus on for math for kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, just to get parents involved with that. We had a lot of fun games as well, and pizza. So whenever we have food, a lot of people come out to that. So anyway, just a lot of fun things getting the year started at Aspen, and so I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm going to take a second and recognize some of our student athletes. I received notification from Wyoming High School Activity Association through the first sports season. We have recommended from game officials. I'm pleased to present Bryson Davis with the enclosed Wyoming High School Activity Association Good Sportsmanship Award for his exemplary conduct and good sportsmanship shown during the Rollins versus Evanston game. We also have one for Jackson Moore, and this was for his exemplary sportsmanship during the Evanston versus Powell game. We also have Jocelyn Roper for her good sportsmanship and exemplary conduct during the Sublette County versus Kemmer versus Evanston swim meet. So hats off to those students and their parents for their sportsmanship. So thank you.
Definitely great jobs.
Make this really quick, Chairman of the Board, Bill and Cassie,
Clerk.
and the board members. First, I'd like to thank the staff at North Elementary and across the district for the work that they are doing around the professional learning communities, the work they're doing to better understand the standards, to better line our teaching in with those standards, and really focusing on how can we help every kid be successful, every kid learn at high levels every day. The work that we are doing around that is very impactful. So I'd like to thank all of those that are doing that work, because it is time consuming. It does take some time up front, but it's going to be very rewarding in the end for everybody. I'd like to thank the administration as well as the board for allowing teachers to attend those PLC conferences, the RTI conference, for as our understanding of the whole process deepens, the better it is going to be for our kids as we continue to help them move forward and be in, learn at those high levels. We had 83 students with perfect attendance at the first quarter. I wish I could say it was 293, but we have 83. That does take away, that does include those that have a doctor's note. But so I'm very proud of that, and I will recognize each one of those students personally. As well as we had a title night where we focused on literacy and math, and that was presented. Some of the teachers volunteered to help with that. And thank the Title I team for their work they did around that. They did a theme of Pixar and had a great opportunity with that. As well as thank the PTO for the carnival that they did for the time they put in that and the parents for supporting it. It was a fundraiser for the PTO, and students had a lot of fun. I think parents had a lot of fun. They had a spook alley that the student council put together down one of the hallways. There were even parents going through it, so that was kind of a fun thing to watch. So thanks to the North Elementary staff and all they do.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else want to share tonight? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. Okay, down to our presentations. Our first one for tonight is our elementary STEAM.
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. Madam Chair, members of the board, it's good to see all of you this evening. Let me just kind of give a little discussion before I introduce Mr. Cox. A few board meetings ago, we were asked to develop and present to the board the how and what of the STEAM program that is implemented at all of our elementary schools. And again, STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. We have had that program in place for probably between 5 and 6 years, and just getting better and integrating those things in those specific areas. One of the things that has been most important, I think, in relationship to the discussion that we had in August and September, has to do with the integration of the visual arts standards. And those standards have and continue to be integrated into that science curriculum. One of the things that I think we found as we were looking at it is that when you're doing that art piece, is that maybe we're not lifting it up and saying, hey, we're doing art today and here's this particular element or whatever that happens to be as we build that in. So the kids just think, hey, we're doing science. Some of them might be in the form of here's a worksheet that they have, but the art then is incorporated into that and what they're being asked to do as part of that particular assignment. And I think that Mr. Cox will discuss that. One of the things that we're really proud of is the work that they have done in the unit planning around the new science standards. When we go to Cheyenne, and next week Jeremy Lash will represent our school district in Cheyenne and talk about the new standards, the implementation of those new standards, and looking at the testing and the YTOP test. And one of the things that's really important for us to consider as we do that is that the development of what we have as he meets with other teachers and districts throughout the state is that we're quite a ways ahead of the curve in implementing those standards. They are the next generation standards. We call them the Wyoming core standards, but they have been and are continuing to be implemented in a very systematic way. So without further ado, let me introduce Mr. Josh Cox. Josh, I approached him and he I don't know if he drew the short stick or what it was, but has done a really nice job and has really kind of taken a lead with that particular group of teachers. They're really a great collaborative team, and I'll turn this time over to him, and then we'll be available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. So just to kind of continue to talk about what Joe has presented to you, behind you is, or while we have been meeting at our meetings with our PLC group, which includes myself, Jeremy Lash, Kara Willis, and Dana Sharp. Last year we really took a look at how we were going to develop the Wyoming state standards and what we were doing with our curriculum, which includes our core curriculum of STEM scopes with supplements from Gizmos, which is from Explore Learning and Mystery Science. So what we've done is we've really taken a look at how these are put together and how we are implementing them in terms of the Wyoming state standards. The one thing that has not changed is, as Dr. Ingalls has said, is we've been teaching the core curriculum at every school since, I want to say 2015, and that hasn't changed. So much so that after teaching the first year with STEM scopes, in the spring of 2015, so going into the 2016-2017 year, we had a chance to, as the four science teachers at the time, which was myself at Clark, Tyler Willis, who is now an ELL teacher in the district, Darcel Lang, and Summer Moore. We had the opportunity to sit down with 2 other art teachers in the district. I believe Sam Kramer was there and Kathy Bella. And we went through every single scope or every single unit that we teach, and we showed some of the assignments and some of the activities that go through. In fact, we didn't show some of them, we showed all of them. And we were then able to then not only put the Wyoming State Standard, what gizmo, what assessment we were doing, but the art teachers were able to then show us what visual art standard we can actually attach to that particular activity that we were doing. So that was a big help for us to see that art is being incorporated into our program. As Dr. Ingalls said, we maybe don't lift it up like we should, but it is there. So if in our standards and in our maps that we go through, we know that in a particular unit, we may hit as many as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fine arts standards in the unit at some point. Are we doing them from the perspective of an art class? Probably not, because they are tied into more of what we are doing around, in this case, building blocks of matter, but they are getting a chance to use what they're getting in science to either build a model or to use their creativity to express something that is more along the lines of or more than to just do a worksheet. And I guess if to kind of show that, I did bring my team has been really good about sharing some things that what they've been doing in classes. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to talk about how all matter gets brought back to the sun. So the kids come up with their favorite meal, and then they build a model of how the sun feeds everything, and it builds down to showing how matter moves through an ecosystem and how matter even moves all the way to your dinner table. So that's just one example of that. At North, there are some different examples of of life cycles and other things of that nature, to where they are getting a chance to take on the science knowledge that we are teaching them, but they're getting in a way that they are able to express themselves. So that is how we are incorporating the A part in the STEAM component of our curriculum.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Cox?
And also, as you look at those visual art standards, there's some key academic vocabulary, obviously, that's built into that. So as, I guess, our challenge right now as a STEAM group or department is to really look at those and lift those up as part of that whole STEAM unit planning process, and make sure that those are incorporated and then lifted up throughout the lessons. Again, I think kids would say, hey, we were doing science and we did this. Unless you lift it up for a student, they think they did science today, even though they might have been doing some creative processes and actually applied art into what they were doing. They really don't make that connection. So that was one of my challenges, I think, to the STEAM department, is really to take a look at that and let's start lifting that vernacular, so that the kids are understanding, here, that's just what we're doing.
These projects should eventually make it home, though, and
They do make it
and
home.
they should be able to see that.
Yeah.
that they are.
I think to Mr. Fackrell, it just comes back to me presenting. So I brought some things tonight. So when this does go home, that it does show that yes, this is a genetics thing where they were flipping a coin to see the traits, but I can also do a better job in my thing of telling them what design principle goes into this. And right now that's not something, so that when they go home, they can not only talk to their parents about the genetic piece of this is what I want them to bring out of it, but for the science standard, but also then what design principle we worked on as well. So that if that goes home and makes it to the dinner table, I think that makes a huge difference as well. So when we talk about lifting up, that is just having my knowledge of what the design principles are around that. I can introduce that with this better than what I am doing right now. So it's just more of me learning not only about getting the Wyoming standards where they should be, but also these visual art standards as well. Because we are doing it, I just need to do a better job of explaining to the students that that's what we are doing. So when they do go home, that's what happens, yes.
Is there going to be a process to see about potentially incorporating more of the visual art standards in what you're doing, expanding that a little bit, or?
I think that as we looked at it and did an analysis of that, we have a lot of those built in. The one area that isn't in there is like art history, but CKLA clearly covers the Renaissance, and some of that art history piece is built into what we're doing in an integrated approach through that. So some of that isn't going to be really as pertinent to what they're doing in the science area, but others of it definitely will be. So again, it's trying to get better and really doing it as that integrated approach to the science, even with the mathematics side of that. Every day they aren't going to be doing mathematics, but it is incorporated in often enough where they're building upon that whole concept and that idea and actually a practical application of it.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
How often are you doing the art type projects in
Art type,
science?
at least once a unit, so for me, that's once every, I see the kids, so a unit takes me 8 days to get through, so once every 16 days roughly at the moment. And a lot of them will have 2 components in it. It just depends on what activities STEM Scopes has given us inside each unit. We can tie certain things in, but it's at least 1 per unit, which is about every 8 days that I see the kids.
Nothing else?
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
for
guys very
coming and
much.
sharing. We appreciate it.
Anytime, thank you very much.
So I said, we're real grateful for the folks who actually bring that forward for our kids every week. They do a really nice job, and it's quite a challenge that we place before them, but I think they're up to that task.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Enjoy your day. Down to our school improvement plans. First up is Aspen.
Madam Chair, members of the board, just kind of as an introduction to this, as part of the state accountability system, schools that are at a certain level are required to provide a school improvement plan. And that's why we have 3 schools that, and your category, I think it was partially meeting expectations. Thank you. And so that's why we have these plans. It's part of the accreditation that will go in. We'll submit it in before the 15th of November, and hopefully it'll be approved.
All right, Madam Chair, members of the board, happy to be before you again and report out the plan that we have. I think in your packet you have the whole plan that you can refer to, but I would like to just talk about a few of the highlights. And for sure, you can check out the entire plan and see everything that we're really planning to do. So the reason we are partially meeting is, so for the ELP part, which is students who are ESL or ELL kids who are learning English, in that category, we're actually in the exceeding category, so we're even above what the main expectations were, so we were super excited about that. The year prior, we weren't meeting at all in that area, so we worked hard there. And then in the achievement, we were meeting standards there as well. We met that. In the older days of school improvement plans, that's all it really was. It was just like, they just talked about achievement was all you really needed. But I think one of the good new things that Wyoming has done, as well as the rest of the country, is really looking at growth of all students. So when it came to growth, we were close, but we didn't meet the expectations for growth of all kids. And that's really important feedback for us to know that, even our highest kid still needs to be growing. They just can't just relax while the rest of the kids catch up to them. No, but all kids need to grow. As well, the equity score, we were a little low there as well, which is also a growth measure. And that's the growth measure of our very lowest students need to be growing as much as count their peers who scored like them the year prior. So if you scored a 50, all the other kids who scored 50, they need to make at least the median growth for all 50 scored kids. If that makes sense. It's a little confusing, but I'm probably making it more confusing. So there's some really exciting things that are happening at Aspen Elementary. We're getting really super clear about what we want all kids to know and be able to do. With that, we have plans set up for those kids who already know the components of the lessons. What are we going to do to move them on? We have a plan for the kids who already get it. We also have a plan for kids who don't get it. What are we going to do next with them? And I think that's really the key to our plan, is really just focusing on where kids are and growing them from where they are to achieve what they need to achieve. And as well, one thing, part of that plan is to just continually be assessing kids. And assessment doesn't necessarily mean give kids a test all the time, but just make sure the kids are progressing at the rate that we want them to progress at, and make sure that we're giving them additional work to help them, additional teaching, additional projects for them, so that they can continue to grow if they've already got the learning that they need when they first go into either math or reading or even science for that matter. So anyway, that is the basis of our plan. And like I said, you have it in its entirety that you can look at. With that, do you have any questions for me or school? Some teachers would have come, but a lot of them are doing parent-teacher conferences as we're in this meeting right now, so please excuse that.
That's okay.
Questions? Okay,
I
thank
don't
you very
think
much.
so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. Next up is Clark.
Good evening. So I would like to start out and just tell you, before I talk about where we were below in target, I'd like to share with you where we met the targets. So we met expectations with 53% in equity for that measure, which means that 53% of our students, our most fragile students, kind of like what Mr. Peterson was talking about, grew as much or more than their peers across the state, according to the 4th and 5th grade YTOP. And again, that equity measures the growth of the students that are scoring in the 25th percentile or below. We also met expectations in achievement, with 62% of our students being proficient or advanced in ELA, math, and science, again, according to 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade YTOP scores. And we met the expectations for our English language proficiency as well. So where we didn't meet expectations, or we were below target, was in the growth indicator, with 45% of our students making adequate growth. The cut score for that was 48 to 60%. So we missed it by just a handful of students. Of course, our goal and our mission is that 100% of our students would make more growth than their peers across the state, according to the 4th and 5th grade YTOP scores, because our mission is to ensure high levels of learning for all students. But for this year, if we as a school when we set a SMART goal, our goal is really to meet to be at or above 55%. Again, I hate saying that, right? Because that means that a certain amount of students are not making that growth. So really our goal is 100%. We're going to accomplish this by improving our work as a professional learning community, We are going to effectively continue implementing the MTSS or RTI framework. And then we're also going to continue to prioritize our time within the school day to implement a guaranteed and viable curriculum and really, really use our common formative assessments to make database decisions for our students. So this means that we'll be building our PLC capacity across the school. We are working with the WDE as part of the PLC at Work cohort this year. And so that's really adding a lot of professional development for our teachers. We are going to continue using the PLC process in short cycles of inquiry. So we are working on unit plans or 15-day challenges where we map out that many days and then decide when we're going to give our common formative assessment, and then use that data to then inform our WIN groups or what I need groups which are within the school day. I'm ad-libbing, so I'm jumping ahead. And then, so again, we'll be using our common formative assessments and creating and using proficiency scales to determine and answer that first critical question: what do we want students to know and be able to do? And then the common formative assessments are going to help us answer how will we know when students have mastered that specific standard, as well as then moving into our WIN time. So we have a WIN time built into our day, which is what I need time. So students at any given point during their WIN time are moving all across the school. We have kids coming, working under the stairs, we have them out in the hallway, we have them everywhere in small groups to really target their needs in service of growing them from where they are and making sure that they are closing those gaps to learn at the high levels, which are the grade level standards and above. And then with that, we measure our effectiveness using progress monitoring. So every 3 weeks or 10 days if we're using MClass, we check in with those students based on the targeted intervention that they've been receiving. We measure their progress and ask, are they responding to the intervention or are they not? And if they're not, then we need to change something. And so we're able to do that in short cycles so that students aren't waiting till like the end of the unit and then teachers are finding out like, oh my goodness, this student doesn't know and I've already taught 15 days and they have no idea and we're moving on to the next unit. So that's really the whole idea and purpose behind the MTSS or RTI framework is early intervention so that we can get kids where they need to be. And that's really the work that we are going to get really good at, continue getting really good at. Another thing that we do during our WIN time is use every available staff member. We've had, in the years past, one of our secretaries had a WIN group right there in the office. I mean, this year we've been blessed with extra support staff, and so that's been really, really positive in allowing for smaller group sizes during that WIN time. But this is our 3rd year of implementation with the PLC process, and every year we get smarter and better at this work, and I know it's the right work. My staff knows it's the right work. They're committed to getting better. We're having more detailed, data-driven discussions as a staff, and I know that the fruits of our labor are going to show with all of our kids making adequate or more growth according to YTOP at the end of this year. So that's my plan. Our school plan is in board docs. So if you have any questions about that, I just did the highlights.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have anything?
Thanks,
No?
Norma.
Okay, thank you. Okay, down to the high school.
We did this stuff when I was down there. We did, remember flashcards? You work at a multiplication, you set up all those and make sure everything's correct. Same with spelling.
It's breathing.
Now we gotta get out of fancy names.
Oh, that's fine.
It's pretty well focused.
Yeah, that's good.
Good?
Yeah. That's good.
Well, that's a little bit better. All right, so a lot of this stuff. So for Sheila, all of these will be on our website after the board approves each of the, and it'll be under the accreditation tab in the district website. So EHS improvement plan. Last year, EHS was a not meeting expectation school. So this year, it's a partially meeting school. So they did improve the status in terms of the school accountability model. So a lot of the things that the other folks have already talked about, you see where we are, where we were last year. And so they already talked about the equity score. Equity score is the bottom 23% in math and reading. You can see that what our score was a 48, 49 was the cut score to be meeting expectations. So it was 1 point away. The achievement target, that's the white top, both it's 9th and 10th grade, reading and math. Again, our score was a 47, the cut score was a 48 to meet expectations. The ELP target, which is our ELL population, and I will say this, I'm not making excuses. I've talked to these folks, we've talked to the folks at the state. It gets increasingly more difficult to pass out of ELL programs as students get older. And so, that being said, that is also part of our improvement plan, is working through that. Dr. Ingalls actually was in Riverton around the same time and actually went with a couple of our ELL teachers to a state training on that. So you'll see our extended graduation rate, our 4-year on-time graduation rate. The reason there's a green check on that is almost every summer I'll get a call from somebody. They're like, did you know what's going on? Evanston High School graduation rate 70% or 60% or whatever. And I don't know where those numbers come from, but our graduation rate is really high. We're at 90%. Okay. So anyway, post-secondary readiness. I'll address that one. That is the ACT, military, and AP courses. Okay, so ACT, college and career ready, that's meeting that score. So in reading, it's an 18. In math, it's a 23 or 24. Do you know, Maya?
I do not.
It's like 23 or 24. Science is a 23 or 24. Which one am I missing? So there's English, reading, math, and science, right? So the percent of our kids that meet all four is around 23, 25%, which is right around the national average for states that test everybody, right? So it's not the ACT average, which is higher, which is also a misrepresented stat. So if you look on ACT, their website, it'll show, you know, the percent of kids that meet all four is actually much higher, but that includes all the states, all the kids that just the college-bound kids take the ACT. If you compare us with kids that are all kids take the ACT as juniors, we're right in the same ballgame. Okay, so again, statistics, there's slides analyzing statistics, right? So you can make them say whatever you want. My point in talking about this is we're not making any excuses. We feel good about the changes that we're making. We feel like what we did last year around collaborative teams was successful. It helped us get from a not meeting school to a partially meeting school. And we feel like what we're doing this year with things like changing the schedule. Okay, changing the master schedule is a huge part. I mean, part of the improvement plan before we had to write the improvement plan. Why? Because we knew our teams needed time to collaborate. Our middle school's doing fantastic. Part of that is because of their collaboration time. EHS teachers did not have that. Now they do. I've sat in on math, social studies, and ELA collaborative team meetings so far this year. They're doing well, right? We've got some things that we need to learn, but we're in a good place. You can see that part of this goal, so the first goal in the improvement plan is improving proficiency in math, ELA, math, ELL, and ELA, and increasing each of those percentages by 5%, the number of students proficient. The second goal is that we'll be meeting expectations in the post-secondary readiness benchmark. I'm going to go out on a limb and say we can actually probably check that, just based on what we know now. EHS, we used to offer the ASVAB. We used to make every kid take it. Well, for some kids, it was a complete waste of time, right? So we kind of went away from it for a while. Well, now we're back to all juniors take the ASVAB. Why? Because that helps us to demonstrate military readiness. So students, right, Maya, you took it last year, okay? Students, last year, we had zero. We had zero military ready students because we didn't have anybody that chose to take the ASVAB, okay? And it doesn't count until you're a senior. So Maya's score that she did the ASVAB last year will actually count in our accountability score for this year. So we'll go from 0 to whatever we have. And I think we had like 47% of our kids demonstrate military readiness just through the ASVAB. So our college career military readiness scores we know are already going to be much higher just with that structural change. So again, collaboration time. So the strategies are really around the collaboration time, just like the other folks have talked about, getting extremely clear about what every kid time, where kids, actually I'll let you talk about it, but do you mind doing that?
Oh yeah, of course.
Awesome.
So with the Devil Pride time, that's actually, I've enjoyed it personally. It gives students opportunity to work on classes they're struggling with, or teachers to sign up students who they know they're struggling with. Or students who aren't struggling as much, they have opportunities to go to ACT prep or other classes they may be a little behind in or just want extra study time, or there's also National Honor Society tutoring time to get hours. So I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to gain something. It's not just where we're all just kind of maybe sitting in advocacy, maybe not necessarily working on our homework, but now like that's dedicated time towards getting better.
How do you feel, Maya, about the opportunity to have choice in what you do during that time?
Well, I really appreciate it because sometimes I need to go to anatomy and physiology to work on my notes, or sometimes when I don't necessarily have something to work on, I can still be productive and go to ACT. And it's nice because sometimes I just want to work on ACT, and because my grades are in where they should be, it's nice to have that freedom of choice.
I know we want change quick. I know we're working at it, and I feel really good about the work that's taking place in all of our secondary schools. I just talked about EHS because they're in that situation, but I can't tell you how proud I am of the work that's going on in our collaborative teams at all levels 6 through 12. And I can't speak to K-5 because it's not my lane. And so, but our 6, 12, they're really working hard in their collaborative teams. Any questions?
I don't think so. No, keep up the good work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Get there.
Just leave it on.
Just leave it on.
Okay. We're done with our presentations, down to our discussion items. First item for our discussion is the audit.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for having us. We're glad to be here. We're a little sad there wasn't a bigger crowd, but
They're coming.
They knew you were.
Heard you guys are
They knew you
presenting.
were right.
we're the highlight of the year. We know it. But we're just going to go through these financials a little bit. My name is Mike Burton. I was the in charge this year. got the wonderful ability to prepare these financial statements. They're fun. This is Dave DeCoria. He's the partner, and he's just here to listen to me talk and bring in a few things here and there. So, first off, if anyone did some weekend reading, were there any questions
I just got
that we
to
can
that.
hit right off the bat, or otherwise we'll just kind of start and go through?
You could probably just start.
All right. So page 1 is the report of independent auditor. And this is our report. Kind of goes through just a few things. The second paragraph there is management's responsibilities. Talks about how management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements. And just a quick thing there, oftentimes when we send financial statements off to clients, they contact us back in about 20 minutes and say, yeah, everything looks great. That's not the case here, and we really appreciate it. When we send it to John, we know that he's doing a very thorough review of the financials, that he really does take, he takes responsibility for it to make sure that what's in here is good. And that's one thing we really appreciate. So further below, it talks about our responsibility, and our responsibility is to express an opinion based on our audit. And then the very last paragraph there is our opinion. And in a bunch of fancy words, it's saying that we gave you guys an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion we can give. So, starting on page 3 is management's discussion and analysis. Now these are actually pages that are prepared by John, pages 3 through 19, I believe. What this is it's a narrative of the rest of the 60 or so pages. It really condenses it down. It gives good comparisons and things that way that you might not be able to find in the financials. If by chance you want to do further reading on this, we would recommend probably looking or starting in the management's discussion and analysis. And if you really want to go further on, fantastic. So we'll just go through a few things on this. On page 6, this is the government-wide overall net position. And the reason we like this table, other than compared to page 20, is it gives prior year information as well. So on this table, we'll just go through a few things. And I'm mostly going to focus on the governmental activities columns there. So under total assets, you'll notice it was very similar from last year. That would be expected, and that's what we did see. Further below that, there was a deferred outflow, and that increased. And if you look to the very right, John has started putting arrows next to the percentage changes. Although some might go up and some go down, usually green means it's good, red means not so great. And so that's one thing he's added to even help readers go through this and see, be able to have a better idea of how things are going that way. So deferred outflows increased, and deferred outflows, that's related to the net pension liability for the Wyoming retirement. Further down is current liabilities. Current liabilities decreased by about 8% or so. Most of that was included in accounts payable, just due to more construction last year than this year. Non-current liabilities increased by a large amount. The majority of that was the net pension liability, and we'll talk about that just a little bit later on. Deferred inflows decreased, once again related to the net pension liability, and total net position there at the bottom of that table decreased by about 10%. Most all of it was related to net pension liability, which is fun. But any questions on that stuff? Okay, page 8 is the changes in that position. And just a few things on this. Total revenues decreased just a little bit. The majority of that was actually in state aid restricted. Because you guys had fewer capital construction projects this year than last year, we would expect to see that decrease, and it did. So that was the majority of that decrease in revenues. Expenses actually stayed fairly consistent from last year. Didn't increase, actually decreased just a little bit, so that was good as well. Net position end of year, now that did go down just based on lower revenues and keeping the expenses about the same. But all in all, not too bad of a year. So, any questions on the government-wide stuff? Okay, page 22. Is the different government funds. And I'm only going to focus on the general fund and hit a few things in this. So in the general fund, under total assets, it actually decreased about 1.5 million from last year. However, total liabilities also decreased by about 1 million, which means you paid off more liabilities. Obviously, your assets or cash and investments would decrease because of that. So nothing really of worry there. The one other thing, down third to last number in that column is the unassigned fund balance, and that's $5.4 million. That is about 80% of what you guys are allowed to have in reserves by the state. So that's actually a really healthy place. When they start getting a little higher than that, we get nervous that you would have to send money back, and if it gets lower, it means it's maybe not, the general fund maybe isn't as healthy as it could be. So 80% is fantastic. We think it's a great place to be in, and John has been keeping it about there every year, and that's great. So we like to see that, and we thought we'd make mention of it. Page 24 is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. Once again, I'll only really focus on the general fund here. Total revenues were down 2.6 million from last year. However, 2 million of that was a decrease in state revenue, and then the rest was due to property taxes. You guys don't have much say over that, so that was a decrease there. Total expenditures in the general fund decreased about $500,000. And so that's good that you guys are still able to keep those expenses down. Once again, so there was, third to last number there is the net change in fund balance. You could think of that as net income. It decreased by about $800,000. However, some of that was due to taxes you received last year that then you didn't receive this year. Another portion of that were committed items you had last year that then you did go through and pay for them, things like that. So not bad, and once again, because you're at the 80%, we think your general fund is in a great place. Any questions on that stuff? Okay, page 27 is the statement of revenues, expenses and changes in fund net position, and I'll only go through the food service fund for this. Total operating revenues for the food service fund was actually up about $60,000, or about 11% from last year, so that was great to see. The total operating expenses was up about $53,000. The majority of that was payroll and direct food costs. So operating income, near the middle of that page there, is a loss of about $1.225 million. That was about $6,000 better than last year. So it's staying in about the same place as it has been in the past. Obviously, food services always operates at a loss, but it's fairly consistent, and that's good. So, any questions in that regard? Okay. Pages 31 through pages 40 are very generic. They're notes that you have to include from school district to school district. Dave has actually made a comment just barely about how he is sick and tired of reading them because they're the exact same on every job that he gets to review. Pages 41, starting on page 41, it's a little more entity specific. It breaks out cash, it breaks out where your investments are held, what's making up your accounts receivable balances, things of that sort. Everything was very comparable to last year, so unless there are questions, I won't go through any of those. Okay. Page 61 is the notes to budgetary comparison schedule. And the very last sentence there under budgetary compliance is that there were no instances in which actual expenditures exceeded budgeted expenditures at the functional levels required by state statutes. So you guys were in compliance in that regard. So, page 62. This is the other post-employment benefit for dental, medical, things like that, the insurance for retirees and their dependents. The very last column there, the ending liability, it increased about 26,000 or so. Not a really big jump, just something to keep track of. And as we start seeing more of a trend, hopefully we'll see if that's becoming more underfunded or things of that sort. So, but this year it was fairly comparable to last year. Page 64. This is the Wyoming retirement net pension liability. I won't go into it in too much detail. However, in the third column there, from last year, your liability amount was about $32 million. This year, it's about $41.5. However, a lot of that is due to timing differences. You already had some of that liability recorded as deferred inflows that were moved into the actual liability. So there was still approximately a $3.7 million expense that you guys would have, that you increased total liabilities from last year. Some of that was the deferred inflow due to changes of assumptions. The other portion of that is in the last column there. You'll notice that the funded portion of the liability decreased from 76 to 69%, which means it's become more underfunded as time's gone on. However, they have known that that's been coming up, and that's the reason why there have been the increases to contribution required amounts. And then from the year that you guys are currently in, there's still one more percentage point coming forward in that regard, and that was to try and stabilize this and make it a little more healthy. So hopefully we'll start seeing that increase again. So, any questions on that? Okay. Page 76 is our independent auditor's report on internal control. In the second to last paragraph there, we state that we did identify a deficiency in internal control. Consistent with prior years, that's the lack of segregation of duties. You don't quite have the staff required to have a complete segregation of duties. And because of that, we're required to put this in the report. However, we just remain cognitive of it and keep doing your guys' job, and everything so far has been great. We don't imagine that we change it from that. So, page 80 is the independent auditor's report on compliance. And in the very last paragraph there, we state, in our opinion, Uintah County School District Number 1 complied in all material respects for the year ended June 30, 2019. And page 82 is essentially the summary of all the other pages before it. So under financial statements, we expressed an unmodified opinion. Once again, that's the best opinion that we can give. We did disclose one significant deficiency, which was the lack of segregation of duties. We did not consider it to be a material weakness, though. And then we disclosed no compliance findings related to the financial statements. For federal awards, we expressed an unmodified opinion. We identified no material weaknesses in internal control over major programs. And then the major program that was tested this year was Title 1A. Were you wanting to talk about that at all?
You know, I just, I actually am fortunate enough, I'm not sure whether that's, to work on the single audit test work on school districts that spend more than $750,000 of federal money. And your district is large enough that you're always going to spend at least that much. If you go back, I think it was page 78. You've got a breakdown. Now, what this is actually the expenditures of federal money. So it's not necessarily the money that you receive, but it's the money that you spent on federal programs. And you can see at the bottom, with all the programs combined, you spent about $3.3 million of federal money this last year. What we're required to do is come in and take a look at, there's various ways of selecting the programs that we need to look at, but you can almost always, in a 3-year rotation, we're going to look at Title I, Title 6B, and the food services programs. And then if we need to get the coverage that we need to obtain, then we might look at Title IIA, we might look at some of the other programs that are a little bit smaller. One of the things that we try to do when we, with the title, with the single audit programs, the audit, what's different about it compared to the rest of the audit is you can be lucky with the rest of it. And we're not suggesting John is or his staff. We think that they do a wonderful job, and we expect to come in and have the numbers be representative of the district's operations. But with the federal programs, you can't be lucky. You've got to have, we test not only compliance, but we test your controls. And the controls are very important with the federal programs to make sure that the people with the expertise in the district are actually looking at the way the money is being spent. And I think in the Title I program, Dr. Ingalls this year, we spent a fair amount of time going over those controls. And with John, I don't know whether you as a board understand this, but he has a real ability with Excel and pulling data out of the actual accounting system and mining it and pulling up different reports. And his ability in that area, I think, has, and we're just looking at some of those controls now, maybe can even strengthen the controls that you have in place in these federal programs. Again, without going further into it, Title I this year, no findings. I think we discussed some areas that we could maybe tighten them up a little bit. And Dr. Ingalls and John were very open to those suggestions, which is positive from an auditor's standpoint. When we feel resistance in some areas that we really think probably needs to be addressed, it makes us wonder about their, can't think of the word. The tone at the top. Do we have the people that are making the rules and setting the example for everybody that's below them? Are they willing and are they concerned about doing things correctly? Your people are, and I think that's very important. That's all I'm going to add tonight is you've got good people in place. We enjoy working with them, and actually look forward to coming here as opposed to, geez, we've got to go deal with John and the other folks. So we appreciate being able to spend the time.
And that's for the Title I staff as well as all the staff we deal with. Everyone was fantastic at getting information to us as quickly as we requested it, even though sometimes we feel bad knowing that they're just as busy as us. They make us a priority, and we really do appreciate that. It's the amount of the fact that we're able to come down in the middle of August, where most school districts were pushed off until the middle of September or so, means that this school district is running things very well, and we really appreciate that. Every time we come down, we know there aren't going to be any surprises. John usually comes down to our office if there's anything he wants to talk about mid-year. So really, when we get here, we know we're going to come here, look at the numbers, and everything's usually very clean. So that's one thing we really appreciate. So, any questions for us?
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
No, thank you for sharing everything and all the work that goes into it.
And we're working on financial statements for districts we're reporting to next week. So if we could be excused to go back.
Please feel free.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
But you're welcome to stay.
You know, if we didn't have to go do anything.
I know.
Right here. Thank you.
Okay, down to our property insurance renewal.
Madam Clerk and members of the board. We, every year, have property insurance that we need to purchase, and as part of that plan, we go out for bid for that. Now, if you remember, last year we went out for the bidding of the broker, and then the broker goes out and bids, selects different property insurance. This year was a little bit different in the sense that, first off, to get things under budget, I had to pull some property insurance. We're kind of moving things around, and they came in high. So their bid was $250,000, and I only budgeted $239,000. So first thing that happened was I turned around and said, hey, can you re-quote this? And so she did. And one of the things that we said to the underwriters is, hey, we've really beefed up our security. And so you're getting a credit, we are getting a credit for all of the safety things that have taken place, the Raptor system, safety fans, and other security vestibule type, that type of thing. So they returned a bid of $239,000, and then we said, okay, can we sharpen the quote a little bit more? Because that's just exactly the amount. And so if we go in and we change our deductible, so if there's an accident from $500 to $1,000, or if we raise it to $2,000, if there's an accident and it's our fault, we can get it down to $233,958. So really, there are 3 proposals. My recommendation is to take option 2, but it's your privilege on which one you'd like. If it's $250,000, guess what? We're going to have to start shifting some money. That's if you want to take it to $239, which is, or actually option number 1, $237,777. We have a little bit higher amount, but I think, if we have an accident, heaven forbid, we don't want that, we can handle $2,000. If you have any questions, and you can also see here's what we've spent in years past. Some of those increases are due to construction costs going up. So as the cost per square foot go up, that's usually the big driver on property insurance. There's also cyber liability and sexual molestation, things that we've beefed up. We live in that kind of day and age, unfortunately. But the biggest driver is cost per square foot. Any other questions?
And you think we could deal with the deductibles if we absolutely needed
Yeah, well,
to?
here's the thing. In the past, we had a really great string. If you were to look at the CAFR has a listing of how many accidents we've had, and we had a string of 2.5 million miles of no accidents. Now, okay, there's regression to the mean, and things can happen. However, knock on wood, okay, it's the risk that you have to do a calculated risk. How much are you willing to guess? And I think part of it is that Georgia Transportation has got a very good training regimen. And my thought is let's rest a little bit on that. Now, that's not all the property insurance things that happen, but for instance, we may have maintenance vehicles, or you may have staff that go out and take the Camry or whatever. My thought is, okay, I'd take that risk.
Okay.
Madam Chair, members of the board, this is on the agenda later to take action on it. Again, it's at your discretion. One of the reasons why we like doing it in November is this has to be approved before January 1st when this policy takes effect. If something happened and we didn't have a board meeting in December, we'd have to have a special meeting and come back and do it anyway. So if you have questions or if you want additional information, we can just table it till next month, or you can go ahead and approve. John and I had a long discussion about this. I think my recommendation is option 2 also.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, John. Okay, down to our WSBA annual conference, which is set for November 20th through the 22nd.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, some of you have been to this before, some of you have not. This is our annual Wyoming School Board's meeting in Casper. It starts at 1:30 on Wednesday with a delegate assembly, and also 1:30 on Wednesday they have a new board member training, which is good training for those that are new and have questions about what you're really doing on the board. It is good training. They spend a lot of time, honestly, at Wyoming School Boards talking about school boards, recognizing school boards in the state, a lot of awards, dinners, receptions that deal with that. Friday, they do have some breakout sessions. The speakers this year, I can tell you that Devin Hughes is very good. He's The Happiness Advantage. He's not who wrote it, but it's a very good book and very good training. So I'm sure that'll be enjoyable and entertaining, and you'll gain some knowledge from that. The delegate assembly, we can send 2 delegates. Chairman Bracken has already said that she is going to attend and can be a delegate, so we are looking for another delegate. With that, this is the first year that I can remember we did not have a resolution. And the reason for that is because I think we're pretty frustrated that our resolutions typically go nowhere, and it's a lot of work for really no return. And I don't know if it's our attempt at a boycott or just a message, but we're not the only one. This is the fewest number of resolutions I've ever seen presented by Wyoming School Boards. Again, that's probably a little bit of editorial opinion there. If you would like, especially if there's someone who knows they would like to attend as a delegate, typically what we do as a board is we go through the resolutions and you give an yay or a nay so the delegates can vote the way you would like them to vote. If you would like me to do that, I can go through each resolution very quickly, and there's not very many, so we can do it in a hurry. If you'd just kind of like to see what other districts have proposed. Just so you know, those that are new to the board, typically we've always proposed a compulsory education, a resolution in terms of we believe that at first grade students should be there. It should not be optional anymore. Allow us to hold students and parents accountable for attendance at first grade. It's never taken any kind of, I guess, momentum, and it's a little disappointing. And there are some that deal with that this year. So would you like me to review them quickly?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the first one is early childhood education. And what it's doing is really an encouragement from Wyoming School Boards Association to support early childhood programs, not necessarily inside the schools, but funding for those programs. Probably the best way is I'm going to just read a little bit. The Wyoming School Boards Association supports early childhood for children 3 through 5 years of age to improve their long-term success as students and productive citizens of Wyoming. Therefore, Wyoming School Board Association supports pursuit of expanding early education opportunities through Wyoming Department of Education grants provided for funding for early childhood programs throughout the state that provide quality inclusionary programs. So we do have a very active group dealing with early childhood in our community, and it's something that, again, it's a common sense, it makes sense. We probably need to look at supporting it, in my opinion, again.
I agree. Is anybody opposed to that one? Okay.
And this is going to sound like, this is 2021-2, access to highly qualified pre-kindergarten programs. So basically, it's another shot at the same kind of step. The Wyoming School Board Association supports expanded, high-quality early childhood education opportunities throughout Wyoming, especially in rural communities. Wyoming School Board encourages that state policymakers to increase access to high-quality pre-kindergarten programs for all 3- and 4-year-old children. So really, they're very, very similar. My guess is they'll come together if they make it to the floor.
Okay. I think we should affirm it.
Okay. 3, funding for school safety and security. I think for us, we've already committed, and we're a model that's what you need to do. But now what they're basically saying in this resolution is the state needs to provide more funding for it. And it's really across the board. For infrastructure, training is a big thing, and it's something that will not go away, and we need to continue to provide additional training for our staff. And as you know, it's a commitment from the board to change some of our entrances. The high school, number one, we need to modify that entrance as soon as we can. Again, I think that's one of my commitments, but it would be nice if we could receive funding to do that.
Yes.
So my recommendation is that we support this as a board.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, 4, reduction in statewide assessment monitoring. Bottom line, this is a movement to not necessarily reduce, well, it is. It's to reduce state and federal tests, to encourage more common assessments, common formative assessments from within the school district. So this is really a movement to support local boards in their decision to reduce testing, statewide and federal tests, but to encourage local formative assessments. So I don't think we'll ever get past a state test, but we can sure reduce other requirements.
I think we would agree.
Yes. Okay. I didn't think we'd get lots of discussion on testing. 5, mandatory attendance age. And basically, they've combined all these, and it's 6 and 18. Dave's not here. David, Mr. Bennett. He is pretty vocal about this one. Again, I would love to be able to say that at 6 years old, you need to come to school and we can hold you accountable for attendance, because that is truly where their attendance patterns are being formed. And again, there's not a lot of legal leverage, but at least we'd have some. Yes. And so I like the 6-year-old. 18-year-old is a little more tricky, because you have some kids who really, really do not want to be in school at that age. And right now, they have the flexibility at 16, 15 and a half. They don't have to come to school. I personally believe that they need to be at school. If this is passed to 18, which I don't give it a lot of leverage because of the argument that I just gave, but if it did, I think there needs to be other requirements in place to provide support for those kids who truly don't want to be there at 16, 17, and 18.
Yeah.
And you've seen our dropout rate. We do a pretty good job right now keeping kids in school. Again, that's, I think, a reflection of our community and value of education in our community. It may keep more kids in school, so it may be worth a shot.
They haven't combined those two in the past, though, right?
They haven't.
They're separate, so why are they combining it now?
I think they're trying to get
Maybe
it
it's
to go
because,
through.
yeah,
Well, it didn't
maybe
go
it's
through
because we
before,
did
I
not do
know.
one this year and they saw it.
So I don't think combining the two is going to help any, because it didn't.
No.
Well, I think we've tried both approaches. Let's look at because my approach was, let's look at the young end and if you guys want to work on the upper end, that's fine, but it's a little, probably more to argue and fight, so I don't know.
That's interesting that they would do that.
And I know historically, we would support the younger age, the 6, but not the 18. I know that's been the consensus in the
Yes.
past. I don't know if everybody feels that way now.
But I think we definitely need to support the younger ones, so if it's together, there's really not much you can, I don't think it's gonna go either way, no. but-
They can pull it for discussion during the assembly,
Yes.
you know, and they can modify it. So, I mean, if we wanted to hold the position that if it stays as is, that we're not gonna support it, but if they're willing to just change it a little bit to include the younger age, then we could.
Is there anyone else who'd like to express their opinion about that one? Okay. But just curious.
So quiet.
It is an interesting predicament. I mean, and you are talking about a certain percentage of kids who would make life miserable for the rest of the students if they had to be at school. But I do think you'd have some students that you would keep until they're 18 because of this. And parents, you'd have a little leverage with parents to keep them. So that's a positive. I can't speak for Mr. Bennett, even though I think I could tell you what he would tell you.
Yeah, we already know.
Yeah,
We know.
So.
I mean, I don't think.
I will speak on behalf of the high school. I think when we talked about this before, I think they do support students that changing it to 18. The big thing is the leverage with the legal side. Just like you want leverage for the younger kids. Once a kid gets about, so the law says to the 16th birthday or completion of their sophomore year. And at that point, there's no legal grounds to keep kids or hold them accountable to school. So if you have kids that miss school, a lot of those kids, they don't leave school, they just quit coming. And then it adds an extra burden to the teachers that are constantly trying to come up with work to make up for students that are gone for excessive periods of time. And so if there's a legal backing to hold kids accountable to be in school, then, and of course, there's some county attorney and some judge and all of those things also have to be supportive of that to make that actually work. But in theory, having the legal leverage to hold kids accountable to being in school, we lose that halfway through the sophomore year.
Well, and that was what I was gonna say too. Do we have the support? Because I know that hasn't always been the case. And I brought that up a lot.
My personal feeling is no.
No, I know that.
Okay.
He wasn't, I think it was a rhetorical question.
Yeah, that was rhetorical.
Okay, I really don't want to say that in public.
Well, I will say it.
But the reality is, no. When we do the letters,
So yeah, we can get the legal backup, but if we don't get the support to enforce that, it does no good.
And that very well could be the most important part of that argument.
And so I'll be the first one to say it, blame it on me, but that irritates me.
And
Oh, excuse me.
Oh, no, you're fine. I could see it flipping the other way if it changed, you know, if the
Yeah, but it
legal
shouldn't
age-
have to change to get the support for what we currently have either. So,
No.
I don't see it changing just because they might raise the age to 18. Somebody has got to get behind it and enforce it.
The couple
we
times that I
can't do
sat
that.
on this assembly, that's why it was defeated. No school district, no police force in the school, within the school district is willing to accept that responsibility now of getting.
And it's getting out of
16 year
hand.
olds. Yeah. So they just voted down.
You know, and the other side of the coin is typically we have students that do leave around the age of 16 and they go do the boost program, and so they do complete, even though the state doesn't consider it a completer for a dropout rate, but for that individual, it allows them a high school equivalency diploma and they can go on with their life. This would probably take away from that program a little bit because they couldn't leave and do the boost program until they were 18. Or not just the boost program, but any program that's equivalent in terms of a high school equivalency. So that's another, I guess, another side of that. Again, I'm talking myself into it, is if we save one kid, it'd be worth it.
So we're kind of down to, you know, if it's as written, do we want to support it?
you know, and I understand where Mr. Bennett's coming from, because when you've got a kid, I mean, we talked about this, you know, when you've got one disruptive kid, you know, it doesn't help the other kids that want to be there. And so I do understand where he's coming there, but I also understand that aspect of it, that if we can keep a kid in school legally, you know, then they might be more apt to succeed than just turning them loose at 16. So I don't know. That's a hard
Yeah, Kay,
thing.
you've been in that delegate process.
What do you think? I mean, we're talking
district
about
wants
these
to
these are
touch
high
it.
school kids. Do you think that
Yeah.
changing the age to 18 would keep more kids in school? Do you think it would be more beneficial?
You've heard your parents
Or
talk
do you
about
think it would
a
be
sheriff's
more
officer.
harmful?
Used to be a
I-
police officer that kept track of it.
I think that it would be beneficial because I
Parents can be fined.
wholeheartedly
That's what I'm
agree
saying.
that students need to finish at least their high school education, because I have family members who didn't, and I think that it would have made their quality of life much better if they had. However, I do worry about like drawback, like, I don't know, kids dragging their feet along with it, but of course that's with any new thing and change, but I think it would be a good thing to have.
There you go.
Thank you.
So what do we say? Do we have any strong opinions on this side?
I'll support it because I know it's not going to
Okay, but what if you did for some reason?
then I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I support it.
Okay.
I just think we need the people that are supposed to back it up need to back it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's my question. What teeth does this have? I mean, we have the
It doesn't.
resolution, and it's all good and warm and fuzzy, but, I mean, how do you hold these kids or parents accountable?
So
That is
what the
concern.
process is this would be, if it's affirmed by the delegate assembly, it goes on and they try to find a representative or senator that will back it and take it to the legislative session. So that's where they would have the opportunity to put some teeth into it. Right now, the compulsory attendance law has no teeth. It's potentially a 10 days in jail or a $25 fine, and it's just, the amount of paperwork required on our part, which we are doing, to get an educational neglect is significant for a $10 or 10-day in jail and $25 fine. So that's the part that we tried to change all these years in our resolutions, and we haven't been successful. So,
And in theory, it's not just the $10, you know, 100, whatever,
yeah, $25.
20, yeah, or 10 days in jail. That's just if they take it on the criminal side, but if they throw it through the juvenile court system, then it is designed to go through and go before the judge and have a team assigned and really work with the family to try to remedy the problem. But if we have an issue with, say, a kiddo who's 16 and a half, because of the law says it's just a 16, nobody has teeth to even take it that far a lot of times. Can't even take it before the county attorney to have it considered to go before the judge.
and really, it's 15 and a half. If you're 15 and a half, they won't do it.
So, you know, so a lot of people, you know, the school district is really good about working with the families in the beginning, trying to put things in place. Then, once things get out of control, then it's referred to Department of Family Services. They try to work with the family to remedy the situation. If they can't help the family improve things, then it goes to the county attorney's office, and they decide if it goes to the courts and try to get somebody really holding their hand and making them accountable to get the kids to school. And it happens all the time. DFS has tons of cases, but the law really does limit it on how far you can push it. You know, once they're a certain age, you can only push it so far.
And remember, in terms of our strategic plan, we took a little different approach to our attendance goal this year. It is truly more education, because I do think that's a key. We have, especially young families that have these first and second graders, to educate them that if they have a pattern of more than 10 a semester, they're in a pattern that is not successful. And so we're really pushing that, and we really leverage, as Cassie said, information about the number of absences. And those that are chronic abusers, when they miss 3 absences in a school year, we bombard them with information. because they're likely to repeat that chronic absenteeism. So the school district, I truly believe we're doing everything we can. We'll continue to try to find better ways to do attendance, but again, I guess where Kay is with that, I think we probably just need to affirm it and just hope that some teeth are put into it somewhere in this process.
And just one last thing, not just focusing the attention on the older kids, but the changing it from 7 to 6. That really, with that whole process with DFS and the court system, if we have somebody DFS called from the school district saying, we haven't seen, this kindergartner in 3 months, if they're not 7, DFS can't do anything about it.
Which is unbelievable.
Well, and that's why I don't understand why that hasn't been able to go in years past. That makes no sense to me.
Because the argument, and again, I'm just giving you the argument, I don't agree with it, is that you're forcing individuals to make a decision with their children to attend school.
Heaven forbid we should have
They
done
should have a
something.
right, if they want to keep their kids home, to keep their kids home, and that's truly the argument. And again, my argument in response is, that's great, but if you bring them at 6, you need to bring them. Don't develop a pattern that's going to result in chronic absenteeism forever.
They could keep them home, though, just register as a home school.
They could, but...
And that's one trip to an office to sign the paper, right?
Yes.
So should we support this and see
Yes.
see how it goes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Let's do that.
we're almost finished. 6 is confidentiality of school safety discussions. This is a resolution proposed to add school safety discussions to the law that allows us to discuss in an executive session. Kind of unique. The thought behind it is, especially in infrastructure decisions and safety decisions, we've tried to put all that out in front of the public so they see what we're doing, but there are probably some things that could be discussed confidentially about tactics, strategies that probably would be discussed in an executive session. Who knows? Like I said, we like having those discussions in public so people know what we're doing. Of course, we don't talk about all of the strategies we follow in our crisis plans. But I don't know on this one. If it's a structural thing, we can do that through real estate and construction in executive session. If it's a discipline thing, student discipline thing, we can do that already in executive session. They want to just line item school safety and security.
This would always give us our choice.
Yeah.
Yes.
We could do it in executive session or out in public session.
Yes.
And we can hold ourselves accountable if we want to not include that as part of our executive session.
Because you're here when they're saying, this is closed.
So do we have a problem with this one?
No.
I don't.
I don't know.
Okay. The last one, I think it's the last one, is revisions to teacher suspension process. If you recall, they made some changes to the process of suspending a teacher. So that's a certified teacher. And what's occurred, and we actually experienced this, where you try to go through the process allows 45 days for a hearing. Well, the first thing that happened to us, if you remember, it went to the state because they select the hearing officer. Well, they couldn't find a hearing officer within that 45 days, so they moved it to 8 months away from the time we were trying to get it taken care of. We were trying to do this in February and March before the next school year. They assigned us a hearing officer in October, I think. What it required us to do is pay the salary of that teacher through the whole process. And what they're trying to do here is at least say if someone's in the process of going through a hearing, the school has a choice of not paying them if they're not working. And if the district loses the process and the teacher is reinstated, then they automatically pay that teacher's back salary. I think, like I said, we only bounced into it this one time, and it caused us issues, it caused us concern. I don't think there's anyone in the public that wants to pay someone and not have them working, and that's what we were looking at. And so we discussed, well, let's have them work, but not in the capacity as certified teacher. And now we're getting into what's happening to the large states like California, where they have a whole facility, they call it the rubber room, of teachers that are getting paid not to teach because they can't get rid of them. So I think this is an attempt to at least modify those teacher suspension removal process so you can have some flexibility. I guess the good thing for us is we don't get into that very often, but when we do, it is problematic. We have no control of who is the hearing officer. That comes from the state. That was changed, probably 10 years ago, maybe. At one point, if a school district wanted to take a teacher to a hearing, both parties paid for the hearing. Now it's all in the school district. So now, because of the workload, we're paying a teacher not to teach for potentially 4 to 6 months. And it becomes a financial burden. So, again, I think it would be good to have them look at the statute again, but they'll have a tough time getting this approved, I think. But I think we should support it, personally.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay. I mean, it's just asking it to look at it and make some revisions.
Any objection down there?
No.
No? Okay.
Okay, that's the last one. Probably the toughest question of the night. Does anyone want to attend as a delegate?
I can't. Unfortunately. It is good if you can experience it.
And David and Kay have both attended in the last couple of years. I don't know, David may want to go again.
He usually does.
He does. He seems to like to go. And he probably would struggle holding that firm up for that one position.
He did it last year.
He did it last time.
He did it last year.
So anyway, but we can contact David tomorrow and just see if he's interested in doing that. If any of you change your mind and would like to go, you just need to call Sherry as soon as you can. The deadline is the 8th. I've never seen a deadline like that from them before, but
First thing up, I think.
again, it's at the Ramcota.
1:30.
So that's all I have for that.
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Okay, so we'll let you know if we can make it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, so down to policy, I love all the abbreviations, DJAA/EFA, or the procurement policy.
Madam Clerk, members of the board. Madam Clerk.
I know, it's kind of catchy.
So, if you remember last month, I gave you a kind of PowerPoint slide of different options and different things that need to take place with the procurement policy. This policy we received from Tracy Copenhaver, which came from Part 1. It then has been pushed onto the state and then modified by us. There's a few things that we've added with this policy.
It's very detailed, and I guess encouraging you to, again, some late night reading, to go through it. John was able to take all of the feedback we got from you last month and insert that into this policy. It's very well done. The federal part is complicated, but at least it's step-by-step procedure and clearly outlined what a micro purchase is, what we do between 10,000 and 25,000, and then what we do over 25,000. Very, very clear. I think it's very well done, and I appreciate John for his hard work putting it together.
Do you have any questions?
I know I don't, but I do thank you for taking all of our suggestions into consideration.
So, I really like the idea of using consent agenda as a vehicle for certain things, and that way there's kind of a balancing of, having everything decided every month to, okay, here's the bounds that you set, management has, so.
I like it. Okay, I think we're good on that.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, down to our bus purchase.
George is here to answer your questions, Madam Chair, and just kind of I'll insert my little bit first, is we typically want to bring these purchases to you a month ahead of time so you can think about them. This was an opportunity that John and George ran into. I'm going to let George explain, and then we'll talk about where we think the funds need to come from.
So when I was in our meeting in Cody, I was offered these two buses that Lewis Bus Group has, and they're 2019 model year buses, but they're new. They haven't been sold. They were stock items they bought that haven't been sold. I went down and looked at them a couple weeks ago, and they were exactly what we've been purchasing. The new bid price, I've been told, is going to exceed $150,000 for the new buses. These are at $126,000. The WDE is encouraging us. Of course, they're saving approximately $50,000, so they're encouraging us to do this, and it looks like a pretty well win-win situation to me.
The district wins twice.
Two buses.
Two buses.
Two wins. But anyway, I guess the point is that they're still reimbursed just like a new bus. The bus, actually, the life cycle years, we would gain a little in that because they're 2 years old already, and the state doesn't buy model years. So in theory, we could trade them in earlier. In practice, they're route buses, and they will probably be kept for quite a bit longer anyway. But anyway, that's one advantage, and the other advantage, of course, is lower cost. And because all the bus is already assembled and it's at one price, I don't have to worry about things like seats that cost us $8 a piece just to make them stay lit and stay. Things like that. All the options are included. They're ready to go.
Okay. Madam Clerk, members of the board, we have two options in terms of purchasing these buses. They're reimbursed over 5 years, so we'll get 100% of the cost back. So we could find a lender over a 5-year period and get them back, pay for them for 5 years, and basically it's a push. That's kind of how we did it in the past because that's how the state allowed us to purchase them in the past. A little different now. Again, I guess talking to John and George, we'd like to just take these out of the carryover. It reduces that carryover a little bit, keeps us away from that cap, and we get reimbursed for the next 5 years, which potentially allows us each year to purchase 2 new buses. That's the trend we've gone. So that would be the recommendation from the administration, is that you pay for them out of carryover, and then we get reimbursed over the next 5 years.
The reimbursement goes back into carryover?
It will.
This reimbursement would actually come next fiscal year.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the buses would be received this fiscal year.
Right.
And the other advantage is this gets us back on track because we had a stutter step a few years ago where we couldn't purchase any buses. And this would get us back on track with a replacement plan.
Okay.
Any more
Okay.
questions?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're done with our discussion items. Is there any public comment tonight? Okay, none noted. We'll go ahead and move on to our action items. Our first item for action is to approve the student discipline.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I recommend that you approve the student discipline as discussed in executive session for unnamed students.
Okay, is there a motion? So moved. Moved by Jenny,
Second.
second by Caleb. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is our audit.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we recommend that you approve the audit that was presented earlier without any exception.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second by Krista. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. For a property insurance renewal,
Madam Chair, members of the board, if there's no interest in tabling this, our recommendation is that we approve the property insurance option 2 as discussed earlier.
okay. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the property insurance option 2.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Jenny. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes as well. Okay, so we're down to our first reading of policy BCA, the board organizational meeting.
Madam Chair, members of the board, if you recall this discussion last month, the only thing that was taken out of this was the use of a secret ballot. That is no longer legal, and so we just made it legal. So the options for selection of board organization is vocal or roll call.
Okay. Is there a motion regarding our first reading on policy BCA?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. And then down to our first reading of policy BDDF, the voting method.
Madam Chair, members of the board, this is dealing with, it puts in print the expectation we've always had that in order to pass anything, there has to be a majority of elected members. And then it goes through the process of, it also adds, you can vote on the phone, but you have to have a situation where you can hear the conversation and people could ask you questions. It's really to protect the individual on the phone. We think that has worked, so we'd like to continue that, so it's added. And really, it's the idea that motions either pass or fail. Tie vote is a failed vote. So, and that's of the elected members. So if there's 5 here and 1 votes against it, it would be against. Correct? Yeah, so it'd be,
Because it has to be the
Yeah.
majority.
Of the elected members.
yes.
Okay, that's just something we'd need to just keep in mind. Okay, is there a motion regarding first reading of policy BDDF?
So moved.
Second.
Second by Jenny. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Okay, first reading of policy JHF, which is the Student Safety Crisis Intervention.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Brett LaFond is here to answer any of your questions, if you have any according to this policy. This was discussed last week by Dustin Blair, Matt Williams. These individuals came to me and said, we'd like to recommend these changes. That group has gone through it and made this proposal. Really what they've done is taken the procedural part of it and put it in as a regulation and kept the policy in place, very specific. It allows them, if there is a change to a procedure, we can do it. Doesn't require board vote. It allows us to keep things up to date, use people that we have in place that at the time are available, I guess. It sets a pretty high mark in terms of expectation, behavior, and these tests. Brett, what else am I missing?
I think you covered it pretty well.
So my question to this one is, when we're voting regarding the policy, are we still voting on the regulation as well?
We'd recommend that you approve both.
Okay.
And that way, like I said, is, what we'll do is the same we do with everything else. If we change the regulation, we'd bring it to your attention. But it allows us, in a pinch, and we have policies that allows us to make an administrative decision based on the staff that we have available, but now the procedures are better outlined, and as times change, or as the situation is necessary, we can make some changes too.
Okay. The only reason I was asking is when it comes down to the procedures, section 2, the suicidal threat. I, just reading through this, I know it mentions, school counselor, psychologist, social worker, parentheses, qualified professionals. I personally would feel more of a specific definition of what a qualified professional is, not just it being in parentheses.
Okay.
More of a definition. And then number 2, that whole sentence just kind of doesn't make sense to me. It's kind of run on, and I don't know if that can be reworded.
The qualified professionals will contact the student, that
Assess
sentence?
the situation, and then there's a semicolon, collaborative team members. If we can just maybe clean that up
Okay.
a little bit, because reading it, it's just confusing to me.
Okay. Well, and this is first reading, so we can take the suggestions, and I'll just take it back to that group and say, this is some suggestions, clarify, go from there.
Okay. Okay, that's my 2 cents. So.
Thank you.
We'll go down to, is there a motion regarding policy JHF, the Student Safety Crisis Intervention?
So moved.
Okay.
With the changes, right?
It's up to you if you want to accept my changes or not, or.
We'll see the
push it through.
We'll see the
final draft.
changes.
Yeah, what you're actually
Yeah.
approving now is what's written, but we'll take it back to the committee to make those adjustments.
Okay,
And then we'll see the final draft.
Yes.
okay, second.
Second
Okay,
reading.
so second by Jenny, first by Krista. Does anybody else see anything for discussion-wise, for suggestions on it? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. First reading policy, procurement policy. I'm not going to do the initials.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we recommend that you approve the procurement policy at first reading that was in board docs and discussed.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we have approval of the school improvement plans.
Madam Chair, members of the board, this is the part, they do require that when we submit our accreditation, that these school improvement plans be approved by the board. So we're recommending that you approve the plan of Aspen, Clark, and Evanston High School.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, second by Jenny. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. And then is there a motion to approve the bus purchase?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we need to discuss if we want to, with that motion, approve it on the pay right away or the 5-year?
I would say we go with the recommendation on taking it out of reserve accounts.
Carryover.
Okay, just to clarify that motion.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, down to board roundtable. I'm gonna put Miss England on the spot. So what did you think so far of everything tonight?
I really enjoyed seeing the inner workings of the school district and learning and hopefully accurately representing the student body at Evanston High School. I enjoyed it. Learned lots.
Well, it's unfortunate because this meeting doesn't really have a lot of student issues, but we do usually talk mostly about students, and there are a lot of infrastructure stuff and management stuff, but your opinion will definitely be valued.
Yes.
Yes, thank you for your opinion when asked by Mr. Rigby, too. We appreciate that very much.
When put on the spot.
That's what I was gonna say.
Sorry.
That was a very quick answer.
Thank you for having me here.
Well, thanks for coming. I just want to acknowledge the decision that the food service and everybody made with offering the meals for the half-days. I was super excited to see that. I know we're going to be able to capture a population of students that sometimes would have maybe not gotten that meal. And so I was really excited to see that, and I think that is going to be great for our community.
I agree.
And I would like to thank John and his staff for another great job on the audit and all of your hard work. I don't love numbers, but I appreciate that you do, so you do a great job.
Yes.
Madam Chair, if I may add to your comment about the lunch, she's not here, so I'll go ahead and compliment her, but we definitely got a good one with Mrs. Martin. She's very aggressive, proactive. The decision to add lunch on half-days is a great one, and so I'm very pleased. Just so you know, next month, the State Department is going to come recognize our food service for their summer lunch program, so kind of cool.
And I guess with that, to piggyback that, all the changes with the transportation had to do with that too. With, you know, everybody letting out later and adjusting the schedule. That, I know that took a lot to figure out, so. Okay, good. Does anybody have anything else?
I have one more thing, if you're okay, if you indulge me. I know I'm not a board member, but just kind of some quick information. We received notification this week that we received $2.7 million in component-level funding for the high school culinary water retrofit, which, if you know how that works, is these projects will not come out of major maintenance. It's a separate funding, so $2.5 million is pretty impressive. Partly goes, that works for our facilities department because of their proactive approach. This was put out there plenty early. We got on the list, and there's funds available. Those funds will be available July 1st, which will allow us time to get the project out and bid and move forward. But it'll be a multi-year project, if you can imagine changing every water line in the high school. Just another timely addition to improve the facility at the high school. So hats off to our facilities department and those in the state that recognized it's a valuable need. So $2.7 million. So
Good news. That's great. Okay, well, I think we don't have anything else tonight, so is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Okay, second by Krista. We're done before 8. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Cassie, we have some things to sign. You need to sign.
Okay, sounds good.